I feel like if I went to a Western doctor and told them about all the mental health breakdowns that I've been going through, they would probably put me on antidepressants, even though I don't feel depressed. Bus bus. I woke up this morning and I felt like I should record a video. I know I haven't been overly consistent with my videos lately. I'm just going through, like, this time around I really wanted to talk about mental health breakdowns or reality breakdowns, and whether they are, and my journey, and whether they are just part of a spiritual awakening. And you know, when we talk about spiritual awakenings, a lot of the time you'll find blogs that make it sound to be really awesome. I don't know what my hair's doing at the moment. It's kind of like, it's really annoying me. Come on, do something nice. But occasionally you come across someone who's actually being honest about it and who's going through the journey, and you discover that it's actually not overly fun initially, or you can have some really hard times throughout it, but it's all for a specific reason, and sometimes you might not necessarily see that reason at the time and might just be going through a lot of pain, but then later on down the track there's a purpose to it and a meaning. This is my painting in the background. Now that I look back on my life, I've had them throughout my life, and a lot of the time when I start to reevaluate those mental health breakdowns, a lot of the time it's been my body, my soul, my spirit telling me that something's not right in the past. So for example, when I felt trapped and scared of my dad and the abuse that I was getting from him when I was a teenager, that was my body saying that something's not right, that, you know, I need to get out of that situation somehow. And then, you know, when I was working a corporate job, I felt like I went through a mental health breakdown as well. And again, it was not the right place for me. But a lot of the time I ignored it. And now when I look back at those years of my life, when I was working corporate and in my previous relationship, I realized that a lot of the time throughout the week I would be okay, most of the time. But then weekends I felt like crying, and I just felt like I would get into this depressive state. And so I would have to go out and make myself feel better instead of actually feeling those feelings. And now, now I find that instead of just distracting myself, I actually allow myself to feel those feelings, because I'm a big believer that anything that we're going through, or anything that comes up for us emotionally, is there for a reason. You know, our bodies have evolved over millions of years, and our responses are there for a reason. And whenever I allow myself to go into this mental breakdown and then come out through the other end, even though it hurts at the time, I feel so much better for it afterwards. And it's like my reality shifts in some way. The reason why I call them reality breakdowns now is because I find that a lot of the time these days, now that I've processed my trauma, now that I've changed my life completely, and I'm following my truth and I'm following my intuition, it's not so much my body telling me that something is wrong, that something needs to change anymore. Because I feel like I'm on the right path on life, becoming a Tantra teacher, moving out of Sydney, moving into my van. All of those were part of me listening to my intuition and listening to my truth. However, now when I go through this dip in my mental health, I guess, I feel like if I went to a Western doctor and told them about all the mental health breakdowns that I've been going through, they would probably put me on antidepressants, even though I don't feel depressed. You know, I might go through a little bit of sadness when I'm having these mental breakdowns or reality breakdowns. But most of the time I'm really happy. I'm actually happier than I ever was before. There's kind of like no guidance in regards to this area in the Western world, and I've kind of been guiding myself through everything that's been happening just by listening to my intuition and feeling into what feels right in my body, taking signs from the universe, as woo-woo as that sounds. And also occasionally a blog or a video might pop up where someone talks about their experience, and that really helps me because it makes me feel like I'm not alone. And I guess I'm recording this video because of those reasons, because there isn't really that much guidance in the West in regards to this. And when I find someone who just talks honestly about what they're going through, it just allows me to just not feel alone, and I know that this is serving some kind of a purpose and that other people have been through it as well. And I also watched a TEDx video yesterday about shamanism and this Western researcher that goes to different tribes around the world and learns about how people become shamans or oracles. And a lot of the time it's through a process of mental breakdown. They actually go through some big mental or psychological breakdowns, and then they are often guided by an elder or someone who is more knowledgeable and has been through that process, that tells them that they have a gift. And then they're guided through this process of going through learning how to harness their special abilities. So I don't know if I have any special abilities, to be honest. I know I'm very intuitive. I know that I can read people really well. And I'm very good at following my intuition, following my own truth, just kind of going through life in that way these days. I don't know if I'm an oracle though. I've definitely been interested in shamanism, and I'm probably most definitely a witch, untrained witch. Yeah, I just think it's worth talking about these kind of things honestly, because one of the things that my most recent reality breakdown was about, and a lot of these things recently have been happening because I'm deconditioning myself from what I knew was true before. In the West, we're really conditioned to believe a lot of things that aren't true through advertising, through government propaganda, through societal conditioning and, you know, ideas that have been passed down through generations. And a lot of the time we take on these things as truth, as our truth, and we don't really question them. When you start to question these things, we're given all these subconscious and conscious messages, we're bombarded with these messages, and often if you don't question where they come from and the purpose that they serve, they can be very detrimental to us listening to our own truth, to us listening to our intuition. These messages can override our own intuition and lead us down a path that is really, really unhealthy for us. Why we behave a certain way, why we act a certain way, why we live life a certain way. And so when I say that I'm going through reality breakdowns, to a psychologist, a Western psychologist, it might look like a mental disorder. But when I analyze myself and my own reality breakdown, I realize that I'm a lot of the time deconditioning myself. And so what happens is I learn a new piece of information that feels true to me, that I've sought out myself, and that feels true to me, that my intuition says that it's right. But then in my brain, it doesn't make sense because it's not what I've been taught. It's something completely different. And so what happens is, like, it feels like this energy goes to my head and it feels like I'm in this fog mentally. And I don't really know what to do with that. So I kind of allow myself to go through this process of, I might cry, I might masturbate, because that moves energy throughout your body as well, for anyone that knows about the chakra system. I sometimes scream and play music really loudly, and just all these thoughts and emotions come rushing to my head as well. The interesting thing about the emotions coming to my head and thoughts coming to my head is, in the past, I used to be ruled by my emotions. I thought that I had to act upon my emotions. Now, however, after doing all of my internal work, I know that I don't actually have to act upon my emotions and what's coming up for me. Because when my emotions come up, it could potentially make me do crazy things. Like, sometimes I feel like hurting someone. Sometimes I feel like hurting myself. But now, even though I can be completely in this fog and completely swept up in this emotion and thoughts, I can come back to myself because I have the tools available to me, like, for example, the altar or different rituals. I have art, I paint, and that can help me stay grounded while feeling all this stuff. And I now know that I don't have to act upon these emotions and these feelings that are coming up. I can just be a bystander and go even deeper and think about what the message behind all this is. Why am I wanting to hurt myself or hurt others? And I wonder also, you know, with crime, with people hurting other people, with domestic violence, I wonder if a lot of the times unprocessed emotions come up and people don't realize that they don't have to act upon those emotions. That stuff comes up, it's kind of like a purging, a clearing of whatever it is that needs to come out. You don't necessarily have to act upon it. And I wonder if a lot of violence happens because we don't know how to deal with our emotions. But that's a side note. These mental breakdowns, I find, can last for a couple of days for me now. Previously, they used to last for longer. I could feel depressed for a week and just pretty much not want to do anything. But when I'm in full reality breakdown mode, it kind of lasts generally a couple of days for me. And I just went through one over the last couple of days when I learned some new information. Everything in my head kind of reshuffled, and I feel like that fog, you know, I went through the reality breakdown. I kind of just rode it through. A lot of the time I paint when I go through these breakdowns. I find that that grounds me, or I spend time with my dog, or I went into town, into Nimbin, and spoke to someone and just had a conversation. You know, the thing that I love about small communities is people know you, and people are friendly. They understand that we need human connection. They look you in the eyes, they start up a conversation, or you can start up with a conversation with them, and it's not weird. It's natural, because as humans, we're social creatures and we need human connection. So I went down to Nimbin, had a chat with someone, and had some food. But that was towards the end of my reality breakdown, when I thought that I could face someone. Previous to that, I wouldn't be able to face anyone. In fact, I ignored calls from my mum who's overseas and my stepdad, because I wouldn't know how to act or how to behave at that point in time when I'm going through this reality breakdown. And so I painted a lot of the time. Then I played really loud music according to what my mood was. I screamed, did all sorts of things that helped me ride through this wave of emotion. And then I watched that TED talk about the shamanism, and I thought that was really interesting, and kind of made me realize that what I'm going through in the Western world is weird, but in other cultures it's not. And mental disorders or mental stuff that comes up in other cultures is kind of embraced and a lot of the time celebrated, or they just know how to deal with it better than we do in the Western world, which kind of also shows how broken our system is. So yeah, that's what I've been going through, is a lot of reality breakdowns, which is part of spiritual awakening, I think. Spiritual awakening is a series of deaths that you have within yourself, where parts of yourself that you thought were true die because you acquire new information that all of a sudden breaks and shatters something within you, and then you go through this breakdown, and then you come out of it in the end. And I think that it's important to realize that you can come out of it, and to not get stuck in that thought process, or in that fog. I wonder if mental disorders or mental health issues, I wonder if some of them stem from people getting stuck, thinking that them going through that fog or them going through that breakdown is who they are, and they get stuck in that area. Because I can see how easily it would be to get stuck. I've nearly gotten stuck in those areas a few times, and it would be so easy to just go, this is me now, and get stuck, and I could see myself going crazy. But somehow, with the right tools and with the right understanding of yourself and how you work, you're able to just ride it out and then come out through the other end. And I think that's important to know, that you don't have to get stuck. And I actually read a really good quote, which I really want to read to you. Let me get it. The quote is, "Life is a series of events that one must pass without becoming entrapped." And I just think that's so relevant to life and to any kind of mental stuff that we might go through, that just because you're going through it doesn't mean that that's you. It can mean that you're passing through, that you're breaking yourself down or dying in a certain way in order for you to come out the other end, so that your life can become better, so that you can be more aligned with your real truth and not what people condition you to believe. So, and I think that I am able to go through all of this stuff better now because of what I've been learning through Tantra, because of, you know, as you can see by my videos, I became a Tantra teacher not long ago, but everything that I'm learning has been such a huge spiritual growth spurt. There's just so much knowledge available in different cultures, and reading about the science and the technology and the knowledge around the chakras, learning about Tantra, learning how to decondition myself and to question. I've always questioned things, but really, really going deep and questioning all of my behaviors and how I act, and where it all comes from. You know, including the way my family interacts with each other as well. Like literally questioning every single thing in my life. I think when you question everything that you've been before, you're bound to go through reality breakdowns. And I think that's part of that spiritual awakening process, is you realize that maybe you haven't been previously living the life according to your own truth and who you really are. And I think one of the lessons that we have in life that we need to learn in this lifetime is to come back to who we really are, and learn how to listen to our intuition, learn how to read the signs from the universe, learn how to follow our own inner truth, learn how to de-stress, first and foremost, because stress inhibits us from listening to ourselves. And a lot of the time I think people stop themselves from listening to themselves and continue on in this cycle of stress and anxiety and depression, and constantly make themselves stay in that because, and I've done this before as well, where I've just stayed busy and distracted myself, because it can be so hard and so painful questioning your life and your current reality and going into yourself, that we'd prefer to damage our bodies with stress, anxiety, and depression rather than going through the pain and then out the other end. And another quote that I love is, "The only way out is through." And it just rings so true to me, because the times that I've felt what I've felt, I've had to go through that pain and had to face that pain, had to face my trauma. I had to unblock my emotions, my unprocessed emotions from my body. I have to question my reality and go through these reality breakdowns, which from the outside would look completely insane. But when I get through to the other end, it's like that issue that was an issue is no longer an issue anymore. And I can move on to the next stage of this wonderful game of life, which will bring up even more challenges, I'm sure. But they're different. It's not us going around in circles constantly anymore. One of my favorite quotes by my mum, she once told me, and it's always, and I've always repeated it to other people, and always just really loved it because it explains so much about life, is that life will give us lessons. And if we don't learn those lessons get worse and worse and worse until eventually a Mack truck comes and hits us. And we either have to learn that lesson or we die. So essentially, I'm trying to avoid that Mack truck by going through anything that I need to go through in order to stay on course of my own truth and what my own purpose in life is. Yes.